All right, so welcome everyone to our final closing keynote of the day. And wow, it has been a day. When we started this morning, the sun was shining. It's now dark outside. So thank you for staying with us. It's been a long but fruitful day. I hope that you guys are walking away with a bag of goodies. I hope that you learned good lessons that you are taking back to your own communities, that you're leaving inspired today with new connections of people that you might collaborate with, that you're excited to reach out to, that you met here today, and that you might think about not just how you can collaborate, but continue to cheer each other on, because we have a lot of hard work ahead in this fight, and we need to be thinking about how we hold each other up as we work to protect small businesses and the communities in which they're serving. As I introduced at the beginning of today, I hope you're leaving here with a new sense of conviction, as well as a sense that you're not walking this path alone. There's a broader community here behind you. I talked about how we might celebrate some of our wins together and steel ourselves for the fight ahead. So before I introduce our closing keynote, I just want to say a few things about what I heard today about how we might do that. Now, I didn't go into every session, so this is just some of my own notes. In a session early this morning with Mangrove Community Wealth, I heard about the need for genuine ownership and a sense that community really feels connected to the spaces and benefit from it in tangible ways. They said to build with community, not for community, and to hire locally. And if you don't have the skills in your own communities, then build them. I heard from Mission Economic Development Agency in San Francisco about a big win, how they've been able to hold 90% of the small sites properties that the city stood up through a program that they were intimately involved in constructing legislation for, and how they've made sure that those sites work for communities and actively and intentionally hired Black and Brown developers to build on them. I heard from Rondo Community Land Trust in Minneapolis about their right to return policies and how they're using inheritance funds to help those who have been displaced from that community make sure that they have the first right to return to that community and to own assets in that community. I heard from Allapattah Collaborative CDC in Miami about the launch of a citywide Miami Commercial Acquisition Fund that is aiming to help local business owners to purchase commercial properties across the city in areas that are at risk of gentrification. This is particularly exciting for those of us from SBAN who went to Miami last summer and saw the struggles of this community to own property in their own community. I heard from West Philadelphia Corridor Collaborative about how they're purchasing plots in the West Philadelphia neighborhood and putting shipping containers on there that are providing permanently affordable spaces for small businesses at a very low cost. LA County continues to wow me. They're showing us what is really possible with intentional and thoughtful leadership. They talked about their $10 million commercial acquisition fund that's offering nonprofits opportunities to purchase vacant and underutilized properties, programs to support employee ownership of small businesses, small business tenant protections, piloting a commercial rent stabilization program, and standing up commercial community land trust and leveraging county-owned land to support small businesses. And then in the last panel, I heard from the Community Wealth Building Initiative that, like LA, was able to leverage their ARPA dollars, not just in the small term, but over the long term, to build an ecosystem that's going to survive the loss of those funds and able to stand up an amazing array of programs that focus on community ownership, from land trust and worker cooperatives to new community investment vehicles. I also learned today about how we steel ourselves for that fight ahead that we all know is coming and in our backyards. From this morning's opening keynote, Janelle, I learned that we need to be thinking about the stages that our communities are in. Are we in that smoke detector or smoking phase, or should we be fighting at the firefighting stage? And that's so important to the strategy and the tools that we use. I heard from Fortis Capital that we shouldn't just be thinking about our capital stacks and that financial capital, and even waiting for the patient capital, that we also need to be tapping into our knowledge capital, and that there's a real deficit there, and that we need to be also tapping into our social capital, the networks like these that are providing the supportive infrastructure that we need to really push new programs. I heard lots about partnerships, both local partnerships, but also partnerships with our elected officials and our government agencies. I heard inclusive action and a great conversation about how we find and build our champions in government, how we co-create big ideas that not just that we're talking to with our communities, but we're also talking to from the very beginning with our elected officials. I heard about the need for data, and more data to help us make the case, not just to help us pencil commercial property acquisitions, but also how we not just make economic sense, but cultural and community sense, and how we change the metric and the matrix by which we define success in our community. And more so, what I left with today is a sense that this is possible, that it's not just possible in some cities, that it's possible in every city, and that you're not alone in this fight to do this work. There is a big and growing movement for community ownership and wealth building more broadly across the United States and beyond today. And our job is to make sure that it's supporting small businesses who need support now. So with that, let me introduce our closing keynote speaker today, Dr. Janelle Williams, who serves as co-founder and CEO of the Atlanta Wealth Building Initiative, who is a catalytic change agent committed to closing the racial wealth gap. Previous to working at Atlanta Wealth Building, Dr. Williams served as a principal advisor with the Community Economic Development Team at the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta, where she applied equitable and inclusive lens to community economic development approaches more broadly. And prior to that, she led economic development opportunity initiatives for the Annie Casey Foundation's Atlantic Civic Sites, where she administered millions of dollars in grants and leveraged significant co-investments. So I'm so excited that she is here today to join us. And welcome, Dr. Williams.
Good afternoon, and thank you so much, SBAN, for inviting me to participate in today's discussion. I am so excited to be here for this timely conference and also this timely conversation. Since the invitation to have this conversation, Atlanta Wealth Building Initiative actually completed a comprehensive rebranding effort. And given our impact in the Atlanta region, our work is actually pivoting across the American South. We are rebranded as Kindred Futures, a think and act tank focused on aggregating solutions to bolster collective Black wealth across the American South. Very excited to be with you today and really wanted to share overarching reflections to so many of you who are tied deeply to this work. You have such proximity to people, to places that are wrestling with the dreams and opportunities to create communities of choice. One of the things that we think about constantly at Kindred Futures is really the role of wealth. And what is the opportunity to really think about bolstering community wealth and what that looks like in our case for Black people and Black communities across the American South. We know that while the benefits of wealth are powerful, it is not justly distributed across this country. And between 2019 and 2022, we actually saw roughly a $28,000 increase in median wealth for Black households. Yet we see that median wealth for Black households lack all other racial ethnic groups. It's 62,000 for Latino or Hispanic households. It's 285,000 for white households, and it's 536,000 for Asian American households. And so I think it's really important as we think about the people and places that we are charged to collectively serve, we disaggregate this data by race, by ethnicity, by several other factors. So we have thoughtful and clarified strategies and interventions to work with communities. And for us, when we look at the data, it is so clear to us that we have to work with people and places who have been pushed to the economic fringes. Fractions and resistance to innovation and change locks us into transactional, lackluster, and quite frankly, unsustainable practices that compromise high-performing economies. When we consider the American South, when we consider how our country is faring, we are seeing that we have work to do to prepare economies that work for all. We believe at Kindred that solidarity is our only promising and sustainable path forward. The Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis recently released data looking at wealth inequality. And what they found was while there was a 66% increase in median Black household wealth since 2019, the dollar value between Black wealth and white wealth soared to $242,000, the highest since they ever started collecting this data. And when we think about the American South, home to 56% of Black people, we found that roughly 2 million Black people live with zero or negative net worth. So what does this mean? We have to acknowledge when we look at this data that our economy and our hopes of democracy will not work if it stubbornly thrives on a racial hierarchy. This requires that we embrace and not reject promising, innovative, and alternative models. While there have been investments in several charitable approaches, they have not translated into sustainable population level impact because they've failed to do several things. They failed to address root causes. We have to thoroughly interrogate and subsequently intervene in the problems we are trying to solve for. Dr. Willow talked about results, and we have to clarify our desired results. We have to define success. We have to think about what is our North Star. Is this just about creating a density of outliers, which actually does not translate to population level impact? Or are we focused on moving the mean? I live in Atlanta. Atlanta is a region that has the highest density of Black businesses. We also have a very high density of people who are thriving. But when we look and disaggregate the data around income inequality and economic mobility, we have actually not moved the mean. More people are struggling to make ends meet and making difficult choices about what bills get paid and when they get paid. And several of them are working 60+ hours weekly. We're overdue as a community, as a society, as a country to activate complementary economic models so that we can have local, regional, and national economies that work for all. So creating inclusive economies really hinges on us thinking about and prioritizing collective ownership of critical economic actors. We need to invest in building an ecosystem that supports local economies guided by democratic principles so that we achieve shared prosperity. And we know when we look at the data that there's both a moral and economic imperative to end structural racism and other exclusionary structures. Citibank actually did the analysis and they looked at how much does it cost the economy? How much does discrimination cost the economy? And when they looked at the data just for Black households, they saw 16 trillion was lost. Several of that was concentrated in denial of business loans, home loans, lost wages. EPI, Economic Policy Institute, released a powerful two-part study around the extractive nature of development and its pronounced prevalence in the American South. And they found that median earnings in 9 southern states are among the lowest in the nation. Poverty rates in most southern states are above national average, and the child poverty rate in the South is roughly 21%, higher than any other region. So, as we think about a region that has facilitated excessive opportunities to extractive development, and then we look at the data on workers, on wealth, on income, on poverty, we see the price being paid. Our work at Kindred Futures is grounded in building a coordinated infrastructure to lead with solutions that ultimately influence capital movers for more just and inclusive, equitable outcomes. And when we talk about building wealth, when we talk about building collective wealth, community wealth, we really wanted to unpack, what does that look like? What does that mean? Interviewed scores of residents, business leaders, civic leaders, and they were very clear: wealth is freedom. And when we think about freedom, fundamentally, we know freedom is one's ability to determine your reality. So, an economy and a democracy that works for all requires active participation and representation of the people and places that have been systematically locked out and denied access to opportunity. So, we have to think about, what's the path forward? These are the challenges. This is the data. What do we do? And I'll just like to leave you with some reflections and recommendations as you consider your work moving forward. We need to prioritize significant investments in leapfrog ideas. Here's the reality. If you ask any economist what's the largest driver of wealth, they'll tell you wealth. Wealth begets wealth. So the notion of divide is actually a really, really profound concept, because wealth is not stagnant, and the divide will grow within the absence of investments that will leapfrog some comparison amongst groups. There will not be parity if we do not have leapfrog investments to help groups that have been systematically excluded. We also know that shared ownership is an essential tool, particularly for communities of color, particularly for low wealth communities, particularly for communities that experience geographic economic isolation. And so the work to help these communities reclaim their rightful control of assets and spaces is absolutely critical. We also have to resist the seduction of silver bullet solutions. And that is a really, really important approach for us to anchor in. When we think about a structural analysis of why we are where we are, and when we think about the data that says by 2053, Black households are projected to have zero negative net worth, when we think about 226 years to close the racial wealth divide, this is not something that can be solved by a single solution. We have to adopt interdisciplinary and multi-sector approaches to move the needle. We also need to acknowledge that we don't have single entity heroes. And many times we are contorted to perform as nonprofits, as practitioners, to make sure that we are high performing, but no one entity can single-handedly address these issues. Our power and our possibility lies in our solidarity. We need a coordinated infrastructure so that we can address these issues in a systematic and sustainable way. We also have to clarify our value proposition. At Kindred, we talk a lot about, what's our role? Are we arsonists or are we architects? Arsonists acknowledge what is wrong and they burn it all down. And while systems are broken, And they also serve the interests of those who design them, so they are functioning as design. We have to reimagine new possibilities, shared ownership, collective ownership, innovative multi-sector partnerships that are centered on people and places that have experienced economic oppression provides alternative opportunities. And so we have to reimagine and rebuild as architects of our civil societies around what is possible for economies that work for all in anticipation of our future economies. We also have an opportunity to become multilingual and translate our problems with and opportunities with integrity. It's important for us every time we do this work that we not only talk about the challenges, but we talk about the costs of these challenges. And so, how do we continue to expand our toolbox so that we can articulate these issues, not just with sophistication and with nuance, but also with integrity so that we secure the desired results we need? Rigorously applying a structural analysis is also going to be incredibly important. And I cannot overemphasize this. Brookings released data saying 156 billion in lost equity within Black communities happens because Black-owned properties are chronically undervalued due to contributing systemic factors. And so, really providing a structural analysis of issues, of challenges, of opportunities is essential for us to move our work forward. And then we need to articulate the problems we are solving for so we can thoroughly clarify the results. I talked about the density of outliers versus moving the mean. And I think the work that SBAN is doing is so incredibly important because it's hard work, but it's necessary work. We could all celebrate success stories. And these success stories, they inspire us and they help us to think about what is possible. But in these stories are a broader charge for us to do the work that is necessary to move the mean and focus on community wealth building strategies that make everyone better off. We need to continue to consider, interrogate, and recommend in a sustainable way how do we support community wealth building strategies that promote the well-being of all. And we have to do it in a way that honors the integrity of our desired results. When we think about advancing this work with integrity, with justice, with dignity, and with equity, what we do is just as important as how we do it. And as we think about how we do this work, I would encourage us now more than ever to pare down on our community engagement strategies. Continue to interrogate how is our work responding to authentic demand. We also need to be very responsible around managing our expectations and being very intentional on how we communicate the menu of possibilities in inclusive development portfolios. We also have an opportunity to leverage nonprofits, practitioners, scholars, advocates, business and civic leaders to really think about how we braid solutions in a durable way across these sectors. And then finally, rigorously interrogate what's our desired impact. Who are we working on behalf of and why are we doing this work? Rigorously interrogating our desired impact is so important. This allows us to minimize the gap between our intent and our impact. And we have a responsibility to do a consistent audit of this. We are at the precipice of a defining leadership moment as a collective. And so many of you are in the trenches doing the hard work, the work that matters. Be reminded, today's news is tomorrow's history. We have to lead each day with the courage, the integrity, the tenacity, and the foresight to be collectively etched in the right side of history. I'll leave you with a final quote that keeps me going. It refills me and it refuels me, not because of, but in spite of. Dr. King's admonishment: human progress is neither automatic nor inevitable. Every step toward the goal of justice requires sacrifice, suffering, and struggle. The tireless exertions and passionate concerns of dedicated people. We must take care of ourselves. We must reflect. We must strategize. We must be visionary, but we must never give up. Thank you so much, SBAN, for your opportunity to share my reflections today.
Wow, Dr. Williams. I didn't know how much I needed that today until I got that gift. Thank you so much for closing us out today. There's so many good nuggets in there that I could just spend a while with, and I will, as I'm sure much of our audience will. So thank you so much again for joining us. We are going to close out the day with a networking session, so don't go away because there's still a chance for you all to meet with each other and debrief about the day, what you learned, what you're taking back to your communities. Before we do that and turn to that last session, let me just do a few announcements. One, which I'm really excited about, which is the announcement that you guys have all been waiting for, which is the winner of our Whova leaderboard. I know many of you have been over in the app and competing vigorously for these points, but we have one clear winner here today, and that is Francisco Arvizu from the Strategic Actions for a Just Economy out of Los Angeles, who will be receiving in the mail a free gift from SBAN. So thank you, Francisco, for your persistent engagement today. I also have a lot of other thank yous that I won't take too long on, but I cannot let us leave the day without saying thank you to an incredible array of sponsors with whom we would not be putting on the summit if it weren't for their generous support. This includes the Community of Opportunities Learning Community of King County in Washington, the School of Architecture, Planning, and Preservation at the University of Maryland, my home, Rails to Trails Conservancy, the National Coalition for Asian Pacific American Community Development, and Access, an equitable development retail consulting firm. And of course, I want to send a big thank you and a big virtual hug to our virtual staff, to our staff at SBAN, who include our incredible senior leaders, Bobby Boone, Manuel Ochoa, Garrett Knapp, who you've seen in some of the sessions today, our advisory board, who were all over running sessions and sitting on panels, our students and our staff, who gave guidance and an incredible amount of time to make this happen. But two people in particular really deserve a big virtual round of applause, and that is our SBAN program manager, Jamie Shankar Persero, who you've seen in many of the sessions, and SBAN's Associate Director of Communications and Research, Katie June Friesen. They worked tirelessly to put on what you saw here today. We've just supported in this effort by In Rare Form, who has been behind the scenes on all the technology that you've seen here today. So to the team, Adia, Jasmine, Brittany, and Muriel, we really couldn't have done this without you. Thank you so much. And I started today's comments with making sure that we pay attention and listen to our communities. And our community and our SBAN fam is you. So we really want to hear from you today about how the sessions went, what you want to hear more of in future conferences, because we are already planning for our 2025 conference, which we will be holding in person in the DC metropolitan area. And we are looking forward to being able to see you all in person there. So please give us feedback. We're going to put a survey in the chat for you all to fill out and let us know what worked well and what you'd like to see more of. You will have access to all the session that you saw today and those that you missed on the Whova platform. You have 90 days of access to the platform, and we're going to be putting access to all the recordings as well as those resources that you've seen shared. We'll be adding some more. So please keep your access and come back and watch the sessions. I know I will be doing a lot of that. And if you're not already an SBAN member organization, please consider joining us. We are going to put in the chat a contact form for getting in touch with us, but we really thrive off of knowing and being able to resource the great organizations on the ground that are supporting small businesses and staying in place. And so if you're doing that work, we want to know about you and we want to help to support you. So with that, I welcome you all to join our final session of the day, which is really a chance to grab a glass of wine, grab a drink of water, grab a cup of tea, and sit back with your other summit participants and really just reflect on what you learned today and how you're going to use that in your community. And also a chance to celebrate the hard work that has gotten us all here. So with that, thank you so much for joining us. And I look forward to seeing you in the networking session. And really thank you from the bottom of my heart for joining us here today and for the work that you do every day.